Number 1. The soleus is a deep muscle in the back of the leg. It sits under the gastrocnemius, the muscle usually associated with the calf. Because of this, the soleus is usually forgotten. Its attachment begins just under the knee and connects at the heel. This is slightly different than the gastroc, which begins its attachment above the knee, and therefore requires a different stretch.
And this is actually the muscle that got me inspired to do this episode. I had a friend in training who was having some trouble in his calf, and he went to a doctor. The doctor couldn't tell him how to solve it. He said just rest it, maybe take some ibuprofen. But this went on for many months, and he didn't have any resolution to it. And of course, in training, this was hampering his efforts. So I took a look at it, and I said, oh, you know what? I think you're just having an issue with the soleus not being stretched. You've been stretching, or he had been stretching quite a lot with the gastroc, and that's the big muscle in the calf, usually with the two heads. That's very common to see in most people. And the soleus lies just underneath it. It's actually a bigger muscle and has a different attachment under the kneecap instead of above. So a lot of people will stretch using like a stair or some sort of standing object that they can put their toe up onto, and will stretch like this. Now this gets the gastroc really well, but it completely neglects the soleus. And to do that, all we have to do is bend the knee a little bit and do that same stretch, putting that pressure on there. Having a ledge or something like this is great. If you don't, you can still stretch this just by stepping back and, again, bending your knee a little bit and putting pressure into your heel. You want to push back into your heel, and that'll stretch the soleus just fine. Within a day, he said the pain in his leg had gone away, and he was able to return to training no problem.
Number 2. The pectoralis minor is a muscle working with the greater pectoralis. It runs from the shoulder across the upper chest. This muscle can become tight and overworked. This pulls the shoulders forward, a condition known as kyphosis, and leads to additional strain on muscles of the neck, such as the levator scapulae, which can cause headaches and other issues such as muscle imbalances.
Okay, so the pectoralis minor, everybody's familiar with the pectoralis. That's the big muscle that runs from the shoulder across the chest of the sternum. The pectoralis minor runs across just underneath the collarbone. Now, this smaller muscle tends to get tight, causes that kyphosis, bringing the shoulder forward, causes extra pressure in the neck muscles, particularly the levator scapulae, which runs from the scapula up the neck and can cause headaches and other problems. This is common amongst violinists, baseball players, and a variety of other athletes. So a simple way to deal with this muscle is, again, stretching. You can use something like a corner, like inside of a door well, and just putting your arm up at a right angle, turning away with both the head and the body to get a stretch across here. And that's going to feel really good. That should help alleviate some of the problems associated with that. You want to do that on both sides. Of course, these stretches should last 20 to 30 seconds. You can even massage it as needed. Just massage through there into the glenoid fossa, just underneath the shoulder and the collarbone.
Number 3. The Semitendinosus and Membranosis. These synergistic muscles make up 2 of the 3 muscles of the hamstring. Again, we run into a problem when we stretch for this area. When we do a standard pike stretch, we are primarily stretching one muscle of the hamstring, the bicep femoris. So many people find little benefit in their stretch and accept this is just how they are, not flexible. But this isn't true. It's just that there are 2 other muscles holding you back, and they of course require a different stretch.
Now, the semitendinosus and membranosus is 2 muscles that share one connection point. So they work synergistically with each other, but they are in a different location than their counterpart, the bicep femoris. So these muscles, in order to stretch properly, require you to simply alter your pike stretches. Most people will pike stretch, say like this. They'll turn their toes out and they'll go down and try to touch their toes. They'll do this from a sitting position, And you'll see a lot of people stretching with this kind of angle in their ankles. And this only helps you a little bit, so people will stretch and stretch and stretch and not get any more flexible. They wonder why. Well, one side of your muscle groups are being neglected. So if you just turn your toes inwards and try to stretch, you should feel that's actually harder to do, and you're going to feel it in a different place of your hamstrings, outside and inside. So we have outside, inside, and you can do this from a standing position or a laying down position, doesn't matter, but make sure you get both sides of your hamstrings. That should make all the difference in the world.
Number 4, the psoas. Like the others, this is a much less known muscle. It lies deep in the hip, providing stabilization for the pelvis, with the lower spine, attaching at several of the lumbar vertebrae, and across to the intersection of the iliacus and crest of the hip bone. In some athletes, this muscle may become overworked, tighten up, or even spasm. This restricts movement of the leg and can be painful in a flexed position. In very bad cases, this can even lead to temporary loss of function as the spasms and swelling of the muscle makes it too painful to walk.
Now, the psoas probably isn't going to be a problem for most athletes, but there are certain activities that could cause some aggravation in this. Dancers, ballet, modern dance, as well as athletes in taekwondo, which is a kicking art, or a martial art that focuses on kicking, could aggravate this muscle. It's located very deep in the hip and is a stabilization muscle. If it gets tight, it can be difficult to bring your knee up high, especially into any of these kinds of positions. This would be a little painful to quite painful. And I was this patient. I had this issue when I was finishing my Taekwondo black belt, and I couldn't bring my knee up like this. And there were times after a long session of kicking that this would actually make it difficult to walk, especially upstairs. There was a lot of pain every time I brought my leg forward and collapsed that hip joint. The thing that you do to solve this issue is pressure and massage. Now, how are you going to get there into the right area to massage this muscle? It is a little difficult, but not impossible. One of the best options for you to use is something like a foam ball, something not too big and not too small either. You want to be able to have some pressure on it. So maybe about a ball like this, a little bigger than a softball, that you can lay on. Maybe a softball would work for you. And you're going to lay on this and put that pressure right in the joint. And really, you're just allowing pressure to sit on that muscle. And over time, the muscle will loosen up. Now, it took probably 2 to 3 months, but I was noticing progress almost right away. Made a big difference, and now, of course, it's very easy to move that muscle, and it really works.
Number 5. The piriformis or piriformis syndrome is a much more common overuse condition, but its commonality also hints at how often this muscle is commonly forgotten about. Located deep under the glutes, it is also a stabilization muscle. When it becomes overworked and too tight, it has a tendency to put pressure on the sciatic nerve running down the leg from the spine. This can cause intense pain that's even been known to cause disability.
Now, piriformis syndrome is something that's much more common, and not just for athletes, but many careers face this kind of issue. It usually comes from sitting down for long periods of time. For example, I knew a guy who was a trucker, and he spent long hours all day, every day, in his truck, driving these long distances across country, and he developed this very bad pain in his glutes. It was neglected for so long that the doctors were recommending surgery for him. But you can get ahead of this if you start noticing pain early and completely avoid that. It's fairly easy to treat, and you just have to be consistent with it. And that really is the key with all of these. But here's what you do. You're going to do a piriformis stretch. Simple enough, just a sitting position with your leg crossed and going into a position where you're able to put pressure in your deep glutes. Now, of course, I don't expect you to do what I just did. Here's another option for you, and one that I really like. It's one of my favorites. So you're going to cross your leg. You're going to scoot your butt up to your ankle or as close as you can, and that really isolates the muscle. I feel it right back in here. This is perfect, and it goes across. That's where the muscle is. It goes across like that. And you're just going to hold that for a length of time that's comfortable for you, but you want to do this regularly. This isn't the only one you can do, of course. There are all different kinds of variations to this. So play around with it and see what works best for you.
Number 6. The rhomboids are another common issue, even if you aren't an athlete. These are the muscles near the shoulder blades and consist of the rhomboids major and minor. They often supplement as anti-gravity muscles, keeping you in an upright position, aiding in posture. But they easily become overworked in hunched and slouching positions that have you holding tension for a long period of time.
Now, this is a classic muscle issue area. A lot of people get knots in their shoulder, around the shoulder blade and towards the spine in their upper back. There's a variety of reasons for this, and it can cause postural misalignments where you're compensating and causing a skeletal or a muscular scoliosis, where the muscles are starting to pull the spine out of alignment over time because the muscles are sore and you're compensating over a long period of time. We want to avoid that. One of the difficulties here is that this muscle group is so hard to actually get. You can't actually stretch it very effectively in too many ways. There's a lot of recommendations out there. For instance, crossing your arms and holding a bar and pulling away and trying to stretch that way. And you might get some relief that way, but honestly, the best thing you can probably do is just getting a massage and having somebody put pressure and rub those out. Another thing you could use is maybe a tennis ball or a little rubber ball like a racket ball, and laying on that and rolling on it to massage those muscles out. But one other thing you might try is a stretch that I came up with on my own. And we're going to do a little bit of a modification from the piriformis stretch. We still cross our legs, and you're going to put one arm through, making sure that you've got a good hold here. And I'm going to kind of lean away. Now you should be able to feel this around the upper back, around the shoulder blade. Of course, nudging around to find the tight areas and then holding that stretch until you start to feel a release. That could take anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute. Don't overdo it. But you want to hold it until you start to feel some relief of that tension. Now you can try this on the opposite leg as well. Maybe that gets the area a bit different. I actually feel it now a little more down towards the lower side of the shoulder blade. So kind of this area here, whereas before it was more right up here. You will probably have different experiences. I've talked to a lot of people about this stretch. Some people, they don't feel a thing. Some people, they feel it instantly and they go, wow, that hits the spot that I needed. So don't be discouraged if you don't feel it at all. That's not uncommon. It's just not hitting a muscle group that you're having any trouble with. So good for you if it's not affecting you.
Number 7. The IT band. A common issue for runners and cyclists is the knee. Even when no obvious injury has occurred, the pain is usually manifested around the kneecap and inner side of the knee and may even swell. But the cause is usually somewhere else entirely and has no immediate pain to identify the source, which is why this muscle is so often forgotten. The IT or iliotibial band is a long stabilization muscle running down the length of the outer thigh from the hip to the knee. Because of anatomical restrictions, it is not readily available to stretch.
Not to be outdone, the IT band is another notoriously difficult muscle group. It's hard to stretch, like the rhomboids, but in this case, it's because this muscle runs from the hip down to the knee on the outside of the leg. And when this gets tight, there's really no good position you can get your leg in that actually stretches that muscle effectively. Now there's a couple of different areas that'll be affected. It's always at the attachment points, and of course you have two. So up here towards the hip and down here towards the knee. Because you can't stretch it conventionally, you have to use other tools. An easy way is a foam roller. You've probably seen people do this before if you've been in any yoga classes. They'll take their foam roller, they'll lay on the ground, and they're going to kind of roll out the hip in that area. Now this can be useful for some people, but cyclists, runners, and certain other athletics may get the pain more down towards their knee, and a lot of people won't even realize it's the itband. This manifests pain around the joint, often towards the inside of the knee, and they get this swelling in the knee and they go, I don't understand what's wrong with my knees. I didn't have any particular injury. And then you go and you palpate right over here and they suddenly go, ow, wow, I didn't realize that hurt so bad. I didn't realize that that muscle was so sore and so tight. So what you do is you're just going to massage this out. You're going to run your thumb down that part of the leg in the attachment point. And you can even at times, let me sit down for this. You might be able to see this a little better. So when you're sitting in a seated position, you can see the tendons. I'm a slender guy, so easy to see my tendons. I'm a good model for this. You're going to kind of reach in and find the tendon, and you're just going to kind of move it around. This is gentle, this is non-invasive, it shouldn't hurt, but you're just going to sort of stretch it a little bit manually with your fingers. And that should feel fine. But that stretch really, or that massage really does make a big difference. And you'll find that once the muscle has loosened up, and again, you've got to be consistent with this, maybe after a couple of weeks, the pain and swelling in your knee should pretty much go away. If it continues, well, of course, you'll probably want to see your doctor. But give this a try. See if it helps you.
The supraspinatus. This is one of the four rotator cuff muscles. It sits in a fossa or divot of the upper portion of the shoulder blade, attaching at the head of the humerus, the bone of the upper arm. Especially after a hard workout, this muscle is often left out of the post-workout recovery regimen.
Now the supraspinatus is another one up in the shoulder. This is one of the four rotator cuff muscles. And it's not necessarily too neglected, but it will sometimes get sore and aggravated, especially after a difficult workout, and it's often neglected. This is one of those muscles that it gets sore, but you don't know that it's sore until somebody pushes on it. So right down in there, it's a deep muscle, and you're gonna just rub that out. It's really all you have to do, but you can also try that other stretch I gave you for the rhomboids, and that's simply going into a resting leg position across your opposite leg, placing our arm through and leaning away. You may be able to feel that in the supraspinatus, and that could help you quite a bit as well.
Number 10. The obliques, transverse and abdominis, and external and internal abdominal oblique.
So to finish up, obliques, they're classically neglected. Everybody likes to do their crunches and their sit-ups, but they tend to miss this whole other area of muscle groups. And this is our stabilization muscles for your entire trunk and your spine. You want to protect your spine, you want to work on your obliques. There's a variety of ways to do this. Picking your legs up, making a fist, and rotating side to side is an excellent exercise for that muscle group. You can also do a side sitting plank, like so, and holding this position, or even doing repetitions with it if you like. Another variation of that is simply turning your whole body and rotating down and up to work those obliques. Keeping your obliques strong is one of the best ways to help with maintaining your spinal health and your body fitness in general. As all athletes know, you don't want to neglect your core. It's the anatomical center of your body. So all other actions are going to be magnified by how strong your core is. If you're only strong here in the front, that's not going to do you much good. You need to be strong all the way around. So consider that. A couple other exercises you might also try are using a bar and hanging from, and just doing lifts from the side. Thank you. And there we go. We made it, huh? Okay, kind of rushing it through there at the end, but